Honestly, just watching the first few moments sent a chill down my spine because of such treachery. I'm sitting here, and every cell in my body feels like it's protesting against this injustice. My verdict is final. The villain's behavior in this video is moral decay at an alarming level. Exploiting sacred family bonds to plot a property grab is utterly disgusting and shows a vile lack of upbringing. My head feels like it's going to explode witnessing them nonchalantly playing the loving relative card to deceive the very person who took them in and cared for them. This is the hallmark of an unacceptable character.
The rain wasn't supposed to fall that day, not according to the forecast. But there it was, soaking the sidewalk as I stood outside my own house with a grocery bag in hand and a gut full of unease. The clouds above didn't care what the weatherman said, and as I'd soon find out, neither did my wife. I wasn't supposed to be home early. The client meeting got pushed, so I left the office around 3. I thought I'd surprise her with her favorite bottle of wine, maybe fire up the grill and pretend for a moment that things were like they used to be. Normal, intimate, real. The moment I stepped through the door, I sensed it, something off in the air. Our house had a distinct rhythm, like a familiar song. And this was a skipped beat. Cass, I called out. No answer. But the sound of muffled voices drifted from upstairs, one male, one female. My heart pounded, blood roaring in my ears as I climbed the steps, slow, careful, and unsure of what I was even hoping to find. Halfway up, I recognized the laugh. His. Jason. My best friend. My business partner of 12 years. The man who gave the best toast at our wedding. The door was cracked, just barely. I wish I could say I walked away, spared myself the visual trauma. But I looked. She was on top. Jason's hands gripped her hips like he owned her. Cassie's head was thrown back in pleasure, moaning his name like a prayer. My name, the one she used to whisper while curled into me at night, was nowhere in that room. I don't remember dropping the wine. I only remember the sound of glass breaking, the way it echoed off the hardwood like a final verdict. Jason shot up first, startled, trying to cover himself. Cassie's eyes met mine, wide and guilty. She tried to speak, but the words caught. What the hell is this? I asked, my voice cold, shaking. Jason stood there, naked, scrambling for clothes, muttering some incoherent defense. Cassie fumbled with the sheets, her face a cocktail of fear and shame. But it wasn't just the betrayal, it was the ease, the familiarity of their movements. This wasn't a first-time slip. This was a routine. I didn't want you to find out like this, she stammered. I laughed, bitter and low. How was I supposed to find out? A postcard from the two of you? Maybe a Christmas card, signed with love from your wife and your best fucking friend. Jason tried to say something. I didn't hear it. I couldn't. I walked out. The next few days passed like a blur. I stopped going to the office. The business, our business, could rot for all I cared. My name was still on the building, but so was his. I built it from the ground up, and now even that felt tainted. Cassie left the next morning. Didn't even pack much. Said she needed space to think. I said nothing. What was there to say? She'd already packed her body and soul into someone else's arms. Everything else was just leftovers. The lawyers got involved quickly. She wanted half of everything. I tried to fight it, but Jason had covered his tracks well. She hadn't just been fucking him, she'd been planning. She had texts, emails, records that painted a picture of emotional neglect on my part. Convenient fiction to justify her actions. In 6 months, I lost half my company, half my savings, and all of my peace. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her on top of him. Every time I opened them, I saw the empty side of my bed. Friends stopped calling. People picked sides, or worse, pretended neutrality, which was just betrayal in a more polite form. Even my own sister asked if there was something missing in the marriage that maybe I hadn't seen. I wanted to scream at her, at everyone, but mostly at myself. I'd loved her, protected her, built a life for her. And Jason? He was the one person I trusted when I had no one else. I introduced them. I brought him into my home. I gave them the keys. Now, they had both slammed the door behind me. And there I was, sitting in my dim kitchen, staring at a bottle of scotch and wondering how the hell my life had imploded without even the courtesy of a warning sign that I could have caught. But the signs were there, weren't they? The distant looks, the missed dinners, the secrets she kept tucked behind her fake smiles. I just didn't want to believe them, because believing them meant facing the truth. I wasn't enough. Not for her. Not for the man who used to call me brother. Not even for the life I thought I'd built. The shattering didn't happen all at once. It never does. It starts with hairline fractures you don't notice until the whole damn thing falls apart. This was the sound of my soul breaking, and I was only just starting to hear it. The silence in the house was deafening. That's the thing they never tell you about betrayal. It doesn't just hurt, it echoes. Every creak in the floorboards, every distant car passing by outside, it all sounded like Cassie's voice in my ears, whispering the lie again and again. I didn't mean for it to happen. Bullshit. After she left, I stayed in the house for a week. Just me, the bottle, and the ghosts. Her scent still lingered on the sheets. Her robe still hung on the back of the bathroom door. I couldn't bring myself to touch anything, not out of sentimentality, but paralysis. Like if I moved too fast, the illusion of our life together would collapse into ash. On the third day, I caught myself sitting on the kitchen floor with a photo album in my lap. Our wedding, our vacations, her smile as she fed me cake on our honeymoon in Maui. It was a different version of her. Or maybe just the version I needed to believe in. Then, I flipped to the final page. A photo from last Christmas, the last time I thought she looked at me like she still wanted me. The same smile she gave Jason as she opened the bracelet I'd spent 3 weeks picking out. I stared at it until I couldn't anymore, then tore out every single picture and dumped them into the fireplace. Fire didn't just consume, it revealed. And what I saw in the dancing orange light was simple. I'd been a fool. After the house, I tried the office. That was worse. Jason's fingerprints were on everything. The schedules, the contracts, the handshakes from clients who now looked at me with a peculiar mix of pity and awkward sympathy. Like they knew. Like everyone knew. They did. Word spreads fast in a tight-knit industry. Rumors don't need permission. I heard whispers. Little things like, "Did you hear Cassie left him?" And, "I always thought she and Jason were too close." Nobody ever said it to my face, but they didn't have to. I could see it in their eyes. Eventually, I stopped showing up altogether. I signed over more power to Jason, rationalizing that if I wasn't going to be part of the company, I might as well spare myself the humiliation of pretending. My lawyer told me I was making it too easy. I didn't care. What was left to fight for? The nights were the worst. I'd sit up late in the living room, nursing a drink and watching the same old action movies on repeat. The noise helped. Gave me something to focus on besides the empty spot beside me on the couch. I told myself I liked the solitude, that I needed it. But truth be told, I was hiding. From the memories. From the pain. From the man I was becoming, someone angry, bitter, volatile. Someone I didn't recognize anymore. It got bad enough that I started avoiding mirrors. Every time I caught a glimpse of myself, I saw him. Not Jason, me. The man who had everything and lost it. The one who couldn't see the betrayal coming even when it was written all over her face. Sometimes I wondered if I'd ignored it on purpose. Love does that to you. Makes you blind. Makes you stupid. One night, I woke up to the sound of my own voice shouting into the dark. I don't remember what I dreamed, but my sheets were soaked in sweat and my fists were clenched so tight my nails left crescents in my palms. That's when I knew. This wasn't grief anymore. It was rage. I threw out her things the next morning. Clothes, jewelry, shoes, everything. Packed it all in garbage bags and hauled them to the curb. I didn't even care if the neighbors watched. Let them see. Let them talk. I was done being embarrassed. Then, just when the house finally felt empty enough to breathe in again, there was a knock on the door. It was almost midnight. I assumed it was a mistake. Maybe a drunk neighbor. I opened it with caution, half expecting no one to be there. But she stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, eyes red and swollen, a duffel bag at her feet. Not Cassie. Her. Jason's wife. Julia. We hadn't spoken in months. Just occasional sightings at company events, polite hellos, the way couples pretend not to notice how disconnected their spouses are when they're too busy watching someone else across the room. She looked at me like I was the last person on earth she wanted to see, and also the only one who'd understand. I didn't know where else to go, she said. I didn't say a word, just stepped aside and let her in. She walked past me slowly, cautiously, like the house might collapse under the weight of our collective misery. Her eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on the bare spots where Cassie's things used to be. "Guess I'm not the only one cleaning house," she murmured. She dropped her bag by the couch and wrapped her arms around herself like armor. "I found emails," she whispered, her voice trembling. I'd suspected things before, but today, I saw everything. Messages, hotel receipts, pictures. I said nothing. We sat in silence for a long while, two discarded souls in a room built for happier people. Then she turned to me and asked, "Do you ever wonder why they get to walk away happy?" Her eyes were raw, haunted. I saw myself in them. Saw my own torment mirrored back at me. I didn't answer, because I already knew. But the better question, the one I would come to ask later, was this. Why should they? Julia didn't sleep that night. Not really. She curled up on the corner of the couch with one of Cassie's old throw blankets, still damp from the rain, staring at the dark TV screen like it might offer her an answer. I sat in the armchair across from her, nursing the last of the scotch and listening to the storm outside batter the windows. It was a different kind of quiet between us. Not awkward, not even sad, just hollow, like two people sitting in the crater of a bomb blast, too stunned to speak. I keep thinking about the last time Jason kissed me, she said eventually, her voice low, brittle. Like really kissed me, not the peck on the cheek before work kind. I think it was 2 months ago, maybe 3. I said nothing. She looked down at her hands. They were trembling slightly. You know what's worse than being cheated on? I raised an eyebrow, feeling it. Before you even know for sure, the sex gets mechanical, the conversations feel rehearsed. You start asking yourself if you're imagining things just because you're tired, or hormonal, or paranoid. I nodded. Been there. And then when you find proof, she continued, her voice tightening, you realize the version of them you've been living with for months is a lie. You're not crazy. You were just being gaslit. She wiped at her face with the sleeve of her sweater. Her makeup had long since washed away, leaving her raw, exposed. There was something heartbreakingly honest about the way she sat there, legs tucked under her, lips cracked, eyes hollow. She was beautiful in a way I hadn't noticed before. Not polished like Cassie, but real, vulnerable. I found a plane ticket, she said after a beat. Jason booked it for him and Cassie. Cancun. Next month. A fucking romantic getaway while I'm at my sister's baby shower. I flinched. The image of them drinking margaritas in the sun, laughing at how easily they dismantled our lives, made my stomach churn. How long have you known? She asked. Caught them in bed. About a month ago. She closed her eyes. Jesus. I thought it was a one-time thing. Maybe a mistake. Then I found out it wasn't. Her eyes opened slowly. Same here. The room fell silent again. The only sound was the rain on the roof and the occasional gust of wind rattling the windows. I used to think he was my best friend, she whispered. Same. We both laughed, dry, humorless. Then she stood, suddenly restless, pacing the room. You know what pisses me off the most? She said, her voice gaining strength. It's not even the sex. It's the way they stripped us for parts. Like we were stepping stones to something better. More exciting. Like they earned their new happiness by surviving the boring years with us. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Yeah, like we were the dry run. The starter marriage. She turned to me, eyes blazing now. They don't get to win. Not like this. There it was, that spark I'd been waiting for. The same flicker of rage that had been simmering in my own gut for weeks. But here, in her voice, it sounded more dangerous. More alive. She dropped back onto the couch and stared at me, eyes narrowing. Why should they get a happy ending? I blinked. You said that before. Because it matters, she snapped. They blew up our lives. Lied to us. Humiliated us. And now they get to walk off into the sunset with each other? Screw that. Her words echoed in the room. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to comfort her or agree. But the truth was, she wasn't wrong. Maybe they don't get away with it, I said carefully. Maybe we don't just lie down and let them ride off into their fairy tale. She tilted her head. What are you saying? I shrugged. I don't know yet. But something tells me we're not as powerless as they think. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Something passed between us, recognition, maybe. A silent agreement. Not revenge. Not yet. But something darker than acceptance. A shared hunger to not let this be the end of our stories. She stood again, stretching, her eyes still locked on mine. I should go, she said quietly. I didn't mean to unload like that. Stay, I said, almost instinctively. It's late. And I don't want to be alone tonight. Her expression softened. Me neither. We didn't touch, didn't move closer. But something shifted in the space between us. An understanding. A truce. Maybe even the beginning of something else entirely. She sat back down, pulled the blanket around her shoulders, and rested her head against the couch. Within minutes, her breathing slowed, steady and even. I stayed in the chair, watching her sleep. The rain eased into a soft drizzle, like the sky itself was finally catching its breath. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew this. The wreckage had two sides, and hers was just as real as mine. Julia came back a week later. Not with a suitcase or some dramatic announcement, just a knock at the door and 2 coffees in hand. Her hair was tied up this time, jeans and a hoodie replacing the heels and trench coat from that rainy night. She looked like someone in transition. Not who she'd been, not yet who she would become. I figured you were still drinking that bitter garbage from the corner shop, she said, handing me a cup. Guilty, I said, stepping aside to let her in. She paused in the entryway, scanning the space. I'd started to clear out more of Cassie's things, donated the clothes, boxed up the photos, deleted her from my playlists. Julia noticed. You're making progress, she said. I'm making space, I replied. She nodded slowly, like she understood the difference. And she did. We sat at the kitchen island, the same one Cassie used to lean on while she drank wine and told me about her day. Julia took a sip of her coffee, then set it down and looked at me with something close to resolution. I don't want to just be angry, she said. I don't want to sit around crying into mugs and scrolling through old photos like I'm waiting for closure. I leaned back against the counter. So what do you want? Her lips curved into a sly smile. I want to flip the script. What does that mean? I want to stop playing the role they wrote for us. You know? The betrayed. The humiliated. The ones who cry and post sad quotes on Instagram. Been there, I muttered. Exactly. I want something different. For both of us. I raised an eyebrow. Like what? Revenge. Not exactly, she said. But maybe. Healing through chaos. I tilted my head. That sounds like revenge with extra steps. She laughed, the sound surprisingly warm. I'm not saying we torch their lives. I'm saying we reclaim ours. Together. As a team. A pact. Her eyes held mine. The spark was back, but it was different now, more focused. Less wounded, more determined. And what exactly would this pact entail? I asked. We lean on each other. We spend time together. We remind ourselves what it feels like to be seen, to be chosen, even if it's just pretend at first. I stared at her, surprised by how much the idea didn't terrify me. And what's the end game? Peace. Confidence. Maybe a little poetic justice, she said, shrugging. And if we happen to post a few photos along the way that make certain people question their decisions, well, so be it. I chuckled. You're dangerous. I'm focused, she corrected. There was a pause, the kind of silence that felt like the edge of a cliff. One of us had to step over. All right, I said finally. Let's make a pact. She held out her hand, and I took it. Her grip was warm, firm, electric. A handshake that felt more like a contract signed in shared scars. We started simple. Dinner the next night, burgers and whiskey at a low-lit bar downtown. No romantic gestures. Just conversation, laughter, and the odd glance that lingered a little too long. Julia had a wit that snuck up on you, sharp and dry, often disguised behind a cool exterior. But once she warmed up, she could slice through pretense like a scalpel. We talked about music, books, childhood screw-ups, and the worst vacations we'd ever had. She told me about Jason's obsession with appearances, how everything in their house had to match, down to the brand of dish soap. I told her about Cassie's growing detachment, how she used to pretend to listen, but her fingers never stopped texting. It was cathartic. Not heavy, not pity-driven. Just 2 people finally exhaling after months of drowning. The following weekend, we did movie night at my place. She brought wine, I made popcorn, and we argued over which decade had the best horror films. She sat close, but not too close. Our arms brushed once or twice, a casual touch that carried more heat than either of us acknowledged. By the 3rd week, we were texting daily. Inside jokes. Random memes. Quick updates. It was easy. Natural. Like we'd known each other longer than we had. One night, while we were walking back from a late dinner, we passed a couple making out against a lamppost. Young, reckless, dripping with lust and freedom. Julia smirked, then turned to me. Do you think they know how lucky they are? Probably not, I said. They're too busy feeling it. She stopped walking and looked at me, her voice soft. I want to feel that again. Not just sex. The tension. The excitement. The knowledge that someone wants you. There it was. The line. The moment when pretend threatened to become something real. I didn't respond. Not then. But I felt something shift. Later that night, after she left, I sat in the silence of my room and stared at the ceiling. My mind replayed the brush of her hand on mine, the way she looked at me when she laughed, the flicker of longing in her eyes when she said she wanted to feel again. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was becoming something else. Something dangerous. Something alive. And maybe, just maybe, exactly what we both needed. It started small, playful teasing, shared glances that lingered a second too long, the kind of flirtation that could still be explained away if either of us decided to pull back. But we didn't. Neither of us wanted to. The pact had begun as a coping mechanism, something to stabilize the wreckage of our lives. But it was morphing into something else. A dance. A game. One where each move dared the other to come closer. On a Friday night, Julia showed up in a black top that clung to her shoulders and jeans that sat just right on her hips. She knew what she was doing. So did I. The moment she stepped through the door, the air shifted. "Movie night?" she asked, her tone light. "Sure," I said, but my eyes betrayed me, dropping lower, then flicking back to her face. She noticed. Her smile told me she didn't mind. We watched some forgettable thriller, but I couldn't tell you a single plot point. Julia sat close, closer than usual. Her thigh touched mine. Her arm rested along the couch back, fingers idly toying with the edge of my sleeve. When the killer on screen made his big reveal, she jumped, leaned into me, laughed at herself, and didn't pull away. "Scared?" I asked, teasing. "Please," she said, smirking. "You've got bigger things to worry about than fictional murderers." "Like what?" She turned her head, looked me right in the eyes. "Like pretending you haven't been watching my mouth every time I speak." I blinked. Caught. She didn't move. It was electric, that pause. And then, almost as if she sensed the line we weren't supposed to cross, she sat back, grabbed a handful of popcorn, and changed the subject. The next day, she posted a photo on Instagram. The two of us clinking glasses at a rooftop bar. It was cropped tight, intimate, the city lights behind us casting a soft glow across her face. My hand was on her back. Her smile was real. I didn't think much of it. Until the text started. From Cassie. "You and Julia?" I stared at my screen for a long moment. Then I typed back, "What about us?" Her reply came quickly. "I guess you moved on fast." The hypocrisy would have been laughable if it hadn't stung. I didn't respond. Instead, I texted Julia. Cassie saw the post. Her response was a single emoji. Later that night, we met for drinks again. The bar was packed, the lights low, the music just loud enough to force us close to hear each other. "She's rattled," I said. Julia sipped her martini. "Good. We said we weren't doing this for revenge." "I said that," she replied. "But maybe I lied a little." I leaned in. "So what is this then?" Her gaze held mine. "Therapy." That night, we took a selfie together, one of those accidental on purpose ones, both laughing mid-smile. She posted it. No caption. Within an hour, Jason had viewed her story. Twice. We were bait now. And they were biting. Over the next few days, we leaned in, hard. Double dates with mutual friends. Flirty comments online. A picture of Julia in my hoodie. Her hand resting on my chest during brunch. All just subtle enough to remain deniable, but obvious enough to start the whispers. People noticed. That was the point. At one point, my buddy Mason pulled me aside. "Is this real?" he asked. "You and Jason's wife?" I shrugged. "Define real." He whistled. "Damn, man. You've got balls." But it wasn't about guts. It was about control. For the first time since the affair, I wasn't reacting, I was acting. I was writing my part in the story, not just surviving it. But underneath the strategy, something else was happening. Late one night, we were back at my place, sitting on the porch with beers and blankets. The city lights blinked in the distance. Julia leaned her head against my shoulder. "You know," she said softly, "this started as a game." I turned to her. "And I'm not sure it is anymore." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. My fingers brushed hers, and this time she didn't pull away. The kiss didn't come that night, but the space between us was thinner than ever, like glass under pressure, waiting to shatter. And yet, there was restraint, maybe even fear, because deep down we both knew, if the line blurred too much, there'd be no going back. Still, we kept pushing. A week later, Julia suggested we take a trip, just a weekend away. "They took pieces of us," she said. "Let's take something back." We booked a cabin up north, something rustic and private. When she stepped out of the bathroom that first night, her hair damp, skin glowing from the fireplace's flicker, she paused at the edge of the room. I stood, walked over to her, and for a heartbeat, we just stood there. Our faces inches apart, breath shared, bodies drawn. I touched her cheek, just lightly. She closed her eyes. And then, at the last second, she stepped back. "Not yet," she whispered. My throat tightened. Okay. Because the truth was, we weren't pretending anymore. And that terrified us both. It wasn't supposed to happen that night. There was no plan, no countdown, no slow burn seduction like in the movies. It just happened. And when it did, it hit like lightning, bright, hot, and impossible to ignore. We were back from the cabin. The weekend had been a blur of scenic hikes, quiet breakfasts, and tense silences that pulsed with everything unspoken. The line between comfort and attraction had been erased a dozen times, redrawn, and erased again. By the time we returned to the city, we were both raw from holding back. That Monday evening, Julia showed up at my door soaked to the bone. A freak rainstorm had caught her during a walk. No umbrella, just her, a drenched hoodie, and hair clinging to her cheeks like ink strokes on parchment. "You looked like you needed an excuse," I said, stepping aside to let her in. She didn't smile. She didn't say anything. Just walked past me, peeled off her hoodie with trembling hands, and stared at the floor for a moment too long. "Everything all right?" I asked, watching her closely. "Jason called me today," she said, her voice flat. "Wanted to know if I was really seeing you or if I was just trying to hurt him." I scoffed. "Did you tell him it could be both?" Her lips quirked, but it wasn't amusement. It was pain dressed up in sarcasm. "I didn't tell him anything." I hung up. She moved toward the fireplace, still shivering. I grabbed a blanket from the couch, draped it over her shoulders. Her fingers caught mine. The touch was soft, then firm, then more. "I'm tired," she whispered, as lifting to meet mine. "Of pretending. Of controlling this." I should have stopped her. Should have asked if she was sure. But instead, I just kissed her. And she kissed me back. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. Months of betrayal, loneliness, rage, and aching poured into that kiss like a dam bursting. Her hands were in my hair, mine at her waist, both of us stumbling back toward the couch like gravity was dragging us into each other. Clothes came off in between gasps and half-laughed curses. She bit my bottom lip. I tugged her hair. When I pulled her shirt over her head and saw the soft curve of her body for the first time, I paused, just to take her in. Her chest rose and fell like a drumbeat, her pupils blown wide. She pulled me down without a word. There was no time for music, candles, or perfectly folded sheets. Just skin, sweat, and breath. Her nails scraped across my back, her thighs locked around me, and when she arched her body to meet mine, it wasn't just about sex, it was release. It was need. She wasn't Cassie, and I wasn't Jason. We were something new, something jagged and bruised and healing in all the wrong ways. Afterward, we lay there tangled in the sheets, her cheek against my chest, fingers tracing circles over my skin. "You okay?" I asked, breath still uneven. She didn't answer right away. "I didn't think it would feel like this," she said eventually. "Like what?" "Like I wasn't being used." That hit me harder than anything else she could have said. "You weren't," I told her. "I know." The room was still, save for the soft hum of the air conditioning and our sync breathing. I stared at the ceiling, running my hand along her spine, trying to understand what the hell had just happened. What it meant. Whether it changed everything or nothing. "It wasn't just revenge," I said quietly. "No," she agreed. "It wasn't." That should have brought clarity. Instead, it brought a knot of something messier. Because if it wasn't revenge anymore, then what was it? Julia stayed the night. We didn't talk about it. No post-sex debrief. No awkward morning after conversation. Just silence and coffee. When she left the next morning, her goodbye kiss lingered longer than it needed to. Her hand slid down my chest as she pulled away. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of guilt, but because, for the first time since Cassie left, I wasn't angry. I wasn't devastated. I was conflicted. Julia texted me later. I didn't regret it. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard, then typed. Neither did I. We didn't put labels on it. We didn't say what came next. But something had shifted between us permanently. We weren't just allies anymore. We were involved. And that changed everything. The fallout came faster than either of us expected. It started with a knock on my door, a hard, sharp, angry. I knew who it was before I even opened it. Jason stood there, jaw clenched, eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept in days. "You serious right now?" he spat. "You and Julia?" I didn't flinch. "You mean after you and my wife?" His face twitched. That was different. Was it? He shoved past me, pacing the living room like he owned it. "This is messed up, man. You two are parading around like, what? Some happy little couple? Posting photos, playing house?" I folded my arms. "What did you expect? That she'd stay curled up on the floor crying while you and Cassie played soulmates. You don't understand. Julia and I were already... Already what? I snapped. Done? Bored? Looking for the next emotional crutch with tits? He stopped pacing, turned to me, face flushed with heat. I didn't want to hurt her. You just wanted to fuck my wife in secret and still be the hero. That landed. He didn't say anything for a moment. Just stood there, breathing hard. Then, quietly, do you love her? It wasn't the question I expected. And I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Jason nodded like that was all the confirmation he needed. Then this is war, he muttered, and left without another word. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with a message from Cassie. Really? Julia? You're disgusting. I stared at the screen, the nerve of her nearly laughable. I should have deleted it. Should have ignored her. But something inside me burned too hot. You lost the right to call anything disgusting the moment you climbed into bed with my best friend. No reply. I didn't expect one. The next day, Julia and I met for lunch at a quiet cafe on the edge of downtown. She wore sunglasses even though it was overcast, her lips painted a soft red. I could see it in her posture. She knew Jason had confronted me. And judging by the tight line of her shoulders, he'd confronted her too. He showed up last night, she said, stirring her coffee. Said I humiliated him. I raised an eyebrow. He's lucky humiliation was all he got. She laughed once bitter. He said I was only with you to make him jealous. I set down my fork. And what did you say? I told him I wasn't trying to make him anything. I just stopped waiting for closure and made a choice. She looked at me then, her eyes unreadable behind the lenses. I'm not pretending anymore. Neither was I. But pretending would have been easier. Because once the fallout started, it spread quickly. A mutual friend unfollowed me. Julia's sister texted her a long paragraph about bad decisions and needing time. Even at the office, the air changed. People talked, whispered, looked at me differently. Cassie emailed me that night. Not a message. A petition. She wanted to renegotiate the divorce settlement. Claimed emotional distress from our inappropriate relationship. I forwarded it to my lawyer and didn't reply. The next weekend, Julia and I went to a birthday dinner for one of our shared friends. We arrived separately, sat side by side, close enough to be obvious. Cassie was there. So was Jason. The energy at the table was thick with tension, laughter that felt forced, eyes darting between us like a tennis match. I tried to focus on the conversation, but every time Julia's hand brushed mine under the table, I could feel Cassie watching. Every laugh between us sparked a twitch in Jason's jaw. Midway through dinner, Julia excused herself to the restroom. As soon as she was out of sight, Cassie leaned over, voice low and laced with venom. You really think this is real? I didn't look at her. It's more real than anything you gave me the last 2 years. Jason added quietly from the other side, you're just hurting her. You know that, right? She's fragile. I turned slowly to him, my voice cold. She's not fragile. She's stronger than either of you. Julia returned moments later, slid back into her seat and smiled at me, sensing the storm but refusing to acknowledge it. That night, as we walked back to my car, she slipped her hand into mine. Her voice was soft, barely audible above the city noise. They hate that we're happy. I glanced over at her. Are we? She didn't answer. Just squeezed my hand a little tighter. And that's when I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about survival. But survival wasn't enough. Something in me, something deeper, wanted more. Not just to outlast the fallout, but to rise from it. Together. The morning after the dinner party, Julia sat in my kitchen, barefoot, wearing my shirt like it was hers. Sunlight painted gold across her thighs as she flipped through the news on her phone. She looked every bit like she belonged, like we'd always been together. But her silence told another story. You barely said a word, I said, pouring coffee into her mug. She gave a thin smile. Just thinking. About. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she closed her phone and stared into her cup. About us, she finally said. About what we're doing. I leaned on the counter. You regretting something? No, she glanced up. I steady. Not what we've done. Just how we've done it. I knew what she meant. The text from Jason. The pleading voicemails. The guilt tripping. He turned from indignant to pitiful in record time, like a man realizing too late that what he'd thrown away might not come back. He said, I'm trying to erase our history, she continued. Said I'm weaponizing intimacy just to punish him. That's rich, I muttered. She nodded, but there was conflict in her face. He knows how to pull the right strings. Always has. I sat across from her. You still love him? No, she said instantly too fast. Then, softer. but part of me doesn't know who I am without him. I didn't speak. I understood that feeling too well. Cassie had been woven into the fabric of my life for over a decade. Her routines, her laugh, the way she used to curl into me on rainy nights, it all lingered like muscle memory. That kind of closeness doesn't vanish. It fades. It stings. And sometimes it sneaks back in when you're most vulnerable. Julia reached for my hand, resting hers over mine. I'm not going back to him. I need you to know that. I do, I said, but there was tension behind it. A truth I hadn't voiced yet.
Honestly, watching this just makes you feel disgusted more than anything else. It's not even about anger anymore. It's about realizing how low someone can go. When people act like this without any shame, you already know there's no fixing it. That kind of mindset doesn't change. It just gets worse.
Because I was afraid too. Not of her leaving, but of me falling deeper than I meant to. That afternoon, I ran into an old friend, Mason, at the gym. He watched me stretch, then shook his head. So, it's serious then? He asked. I wiped sweat from my forehead. What's it? You and Julia. People are talking. Let them. He sighed. Look, man. I'm not judging, but some of us have known Jason since college. This thing, whatever it is, it's making waves. I looked at him. So what? I'm supposed to stay broken so everyone else stays comfortable? He didn't answer. Just patted my shoulder and walked off. That night, I couldn't sleep. Julia had gone home early, claiming she needed a night alone. I believed her, but part of me wondered if she was creating space, putting distance between what we built and what it was turning into. I scrolled through my phone, mindlessly thumbing through photos. There was one of us at the cabin. She was looking out at the lake, her back to me, hair dancing in the wind. It wasn't posed. She didn't even know I took it. But something about that photo hit me harder than any kiss we'd shared. Because she looked free, and I wasn't sure I was letting her stay that way. The next day, we met at a bookstore cafe she liked. She wore a soft sweater, no makeup, and her hair in a loose bun. Still the most beautiful woman in the room. She sipped her drink and said, "You ever wonder if we're just two people clinging to each other to avoid sinking?" I blinked. That's dark. Is it? I leaned forward. Julia, I care about you. I don't know exactly what this is yet, but it's not just survival. She looked at me then, really looked. I believe you, she said. But I'm scared I'm becoming dependent on you the same way I used to be with him. That I'm trading one anchor for another. The words stung, but I understood. Then let's not be anchors, I said. Let's be something else. Like what? I smiled. A raft. She laughed, a real laugh. Terrible metaphor. Maybe, I said, reaching across the table, taking her hand. But it still floats. She nodded, fingers lacing with mine. But I saw it in her eyes, doubt still lingered. And maybe it always would. That night, I sat in the silence of my apartment, wondering if love could really bloom out of ruin. If two broken people could ever build something whole. The loyalty I felt toward Julia was real, but so was the weight of everything we'd lost. And as we navigated that fragile in-between, one thing was certain. We weren't just fighting our exes anymore. We were fighting ourselves. The truth came from an unlikely source, a friend I hadn't spoken to in months. His name was Calvin. We played golf together a few times, had drinks with our wives back when our wives meant Cassie and Julia. Back before the ground cracked beneath us. I hadn't expected his call, and at first, I let it ring out. But curiosity, or maybe intuition, got the better of me. Hey, I answered, cautious. Man, he exhaled, voice low and rushed. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but I can't sit on this. Okay. It wasn't just a few months. Cassie and Jason? That shit started over a year ago. Maybe more. I froze. They told everyone it was recent, I said flatly. Something that just happened. He snorted. Yeah, well, Cassie let it slip to my wife after too much wine at a dinner party back in March. Said something like, we knew it was wrong, but it felt right from the start. The start? Calvin hesitated. She meant the first Vegas convention. 2 years ago. Silence stretched between us. I'd been there too, at that convention. I remembered the night Cassie disappeared to get drinks with friends, while Jason and I split up to work the room. I remembered her slipping into our hotel room past midnight with lipstick smudged and excuses at the ready. I had believed her. Now, I knew I shouldn't have. Sorry, man, Calvin said quietly. I figured you'd want the truth. I hung up without another word. The rage was volcanic. Not loud. Not explosive. Just slow, suffocating heat. I sat in the living room, staring at nothing, my fist clenched so tightly my knuckles ached. They both looked me in the eye, told me it was a lapse in judgment, that it just happened months ago, that they never meant to fall in love. But it was all a script, one they'd been rehearsing for years. That night, Julia came over without asking. She must have sensed it. She stepped inside, saw the look on my face, and set her bag down slowly. "What happened?" she asked. I told her. All of it. She listened, silent and still, her eyes wide, not with surprise, but with confirmation. "I knew it," she said when I finished. "I knew it was deeper than they claimed." I looked at her. "You did?" She nodded. There were signs. Subtle things. Moments that didn't make sense at the time. But now... Her voice trailed off. I sat down heavily on the couch. It wasn't just betrayal. It was orchestrated. She sat beside me. They thought we were too stupid to see it. Too soft to react. They thought we'd move on quietly. Julia reached into her bag, pulled out a stack of photos. Old ones, vacations, barbecues, birthdays. Jason with his arm around Cassie. Me in the background, laughing. Julia on the edge of every frame, always just outside the center. "They've been building this life for years," she said. I flipped through the photos, seeing it now. The way Jason looked at Cassie when he thought no one was watching. The way her hand lingered on his arm. Julia sighed. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "They were never going to tell us." That landed with brutal precision. Because it was true. If I hadn't come home early that day, if Julia hadn't found those emails, they would have kept going. Sneaking. Lying. Smiling in our faces like nothing had changed. "We need to take this back," I said quietly. "Take what?" "Our story. Our strength. Everything they tried to steal." She looked at me, eyes sharp now. "You mean it?" I nodded. "I don't want revenge. I want clarity. I want to build something they can't touch." Julia hesitated, then reached out, her fingers brushing mine. "Then let's do it together." And in that moment, the weight on my chest loosened. Not gone, but lighter. We spent the night talking. Not touching. Just words. Honest ones. She told me she'd never felt truly seen by Jason. That he'd praised her in public but ignored her in private. That their sex life had become transactional. That her laughter was just a mask. I told her about Cassie's coldness, her detachment, how every year she seemed to withdraw further, until the woman in our wedding photos became a stranger sleeping next to me. We spoke like survivors. Because that's what we were. The next morning, I made breakfast, real food, not coffee, in silence. Julia sat on the kitchen stool, watching me scramble eggs like I'd done it 100 times. "You're domestic," she teased. I smiled. "Don't get used to it." She tilted her head. "Maybe I want to." There it was. The shift. Not explosive, not dramatic. Just real. That evening, she sent me a text. "I meant what I said last night. You're the first man who actually sees me." I typed back. "And you're the first woman who made me want to be seen." No emojis. No games. Just truth. The kind you only share after the storm has passed, and you're standing barefoot on soaked ground, ready to build something from the wreckage. Together. It was Julia's idea to go to the gala. A black tie affair hosted by one of our mutual clients, a tech startup whose founder we'd both known for years. Jason would be there. So would Cassie. The invite list read like a roll call of people who used to pity us. Not anymore. "We don't go to cause a scene," Julia said as she adjusted her earring in the mirror. "We go to show them we're not the story they wrote." I watched her as she spoke, mesmerized. Her dress was deep emerald, off the shoulder, hugging her in all the right ways. Her hair cascaded in soft waves, eyes lined just sharp enough to make an ex-husband rethink his choices. "And if we do cause a scene?" I asked. She turned, lips curling into a slow smile. "Then we'll do it beautifully." The ballroom glowed gold and ivory, with chandeliers that glittered like stars and music that whispered through the crowd. People turned when we walked in, heads angled. Whispers traded like currency. Julia slipped her arm into mine and leaned just close enough to make it clear we weren't pretending anymore. Jason saw us first. He froze mid-conversation, the smile on his face cracking like glass under heat. He tried to recover, laughing at something his colleague said, but the shift in his posture gave him away. Cassie appeared a moment later, wearing a red dress that tried too hard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her gaze landed on Julia, then me, then our hands, linked and unbothered. For the first time in a long while, I felt in control. We didn't approach them. We didn't need to. The power wasn't in confrontation. It was in presence. Julia held herself with ease, floating through conversations, drawing laughter from people who used to avert their eyes around her. I watched her command the room with grace and intelligence, A woman who had nothing to prove but still proved everything. I caught Jason watching her. More than once. And every time, his jaw tightened. At one point, I turned a corner and nearly collided with Cassie. She blinked up at me, wine glass in hand, lips parting like she had something rehearsed. "Hi," she said. "Cassie, you look, well, I am." She glanced past me, toward where Julia stood laughing beside two VPs. "You and her? It's serious?" "Yes." Her mouth moved, but no words came. Then, finally, it just happened so fast. I raised an eyebrow. "Compared to what? 2 years of lying behind my back?" She flinched. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Cassie swallowed. "I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to get caught." We stared at each other for a beat too long. She looked tired. Older. There was no glow, no mystique. Just someone who thought she'd be the one standing next to success, and now had to watch it from across the room. Jason joined her a moment later, his hand brushing hers. His smile didn't match his eyes. "We should talk sometime," he said, forced casual. "No," I replied. "We shouldn't." I walked away without waiting for a response. Later that night, after the music swelled and glasses emptied, Julia and I stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city. The air was crisp, the sky clear. She leaned against the railing, the wind brushing her hair back. "How did it feel?" she asked. "Which part?" "All of it." I thought for a moment. "Like peace, with a little satisfaction on top." She laughed. "Better than revenge?" "Much." We stood there for a while, watching the city blink below us. "They're unraveling," she said. Cassie kept glaring. Jason looked like he wanted to say something 100 times, but couldn't. "They wanted us broken," I said. "Instead, we rebuilt." She turned to me, her expression softer now. "Not just rebuilt, reimagined." I reached for her hand. "Thank you. For this. For not letting me drown." She stepped closer, slipping her arms around my waist. We saved each other. Her kiss that night wasn't showy. It wasn't for anyone else. It was quiet, private, real. Inside, the party continued, laughter, music, toasts being made. But out there, on that balcony, everything finally felt still. For the first time in months, I wasn't angry. I wasn't grieving. I was content. And as Julia rested her head against my chest, I realized something. What we had started as a spark born from wreckage had become something more. Something steady. Something pure. And maybe, just maybe, something lasting. There was no dramatic ending. No final confrontation. Just the quiet moments that come when you stop surviving and start living again. Julia moved in a month after the gala, not because we needed to prove anything, but because every night apart started to feel unnecessary. She brought her books, her tea mugs, and a single old chair she refused to leave behind. I gave her space in the closet and learned how she took her coffee without asking. The transition wasn't perfect. She had habits. I had scars. There were days we clashed, moments we doubted. But under all of it was something unshakable, respect, and tenderness. And the kind of intimacy that doesn't always announce itself, but seeps into the way you move through a room when you know someone's watching. We didn't speak of Jason or Cassie much anymore. Occasionally, they'd come up in passing, names from another life. Rumor had it Jason tried to float the idea of marriage, but Julia told me with a laugh that she'd received an email from his assistant, not him. Even his proposal was outsourced, she'd joked. Cassie stayed quiet. I knew she'd moved in with someone new, though her social media posts had gone from curated and bright to vague and performative. Once, I saw a picture of her at a vineyard, holding a glass of wine, eyes vacant. The caption read, "Healing isn't linear." I didn't feel smug. I felt nothing. And that, more than anything, told me I'd moved on. Julia and I started our own traditions. Sunday brunches with no phones. Tuesday nights trying new recipes that mostly went wrong. Every second Saturday, we'd drive somewhere unfamiliar with a playlist we built together, Fleetwood Mac into Kendrick Lamar into the National. There was sex, of course, intense, warm, sometimes rushed, sometimes slow. But it wasn't the foundation anymore. It was just part of the rhythm. The intimacy between us had grown deeper, shaped by quiet mornings and late-night laughter. One night, months after everything, I woke up to find Julia watching me sleep. The moonlight painted her face silver. "Why are you staring at me like that?" I murmured. She smiled. "Just thinking. About." She leaned in, kissed me gently. "How grateful I am that we crashed into each other." I pulled her closer. We didn't crash. We found each other in the wreckage. She rested her head on my chest. Same thing. The next morning, we didn't get out of bed until noon. We lay tangled in sheets in sunlight, fingers drifting across skin, trading stories we hadn't told yet, childhood crushes, worst dates, near-death moments. Her laugh made my chest feel full. Later, while making pancakes, she stopped suddenly, spatula in hand, eyes wide. We never had a label, did we? I turned from the coffee pot. Nope. She smirked. We're very off-brand millennials. So, do we need one? She tilted her head, mock serious. I don't know. I kind of like calling you mine. I stepped closer, kissed her forehead. Then call me that. She did. Often. One day, she handed me a small notebook, leather-bound, filled with ink and margin notes. What's this? I asked. My journal, she said. From the beginning. From the day I knocked on your door. I flipped through it. Her handwriting curled across pages like vines, each entry marked with raw emotion, pain, confusion, hope. I read one aloud. I don't know what this is yet, but it feels like light trying to break through. I looked up at her. She smiled. I wrote that after our first real kiss. I nodded. It broke through. Outside, the seasons turned. Leaves fell. Snow came and went. Spring bloomed, and with it, something settled inside me, a piece I hadn't known I was missing. We built a life. Not as a statement. Not to prove anything. Just because we wanted to. One morning, I watched her water the plants on our balcony, sun catching her cheek, a small smile on her lips. No audience. No script. Just a woman at peace. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about what we'd lost anymore. It was about what we'd found. Not revenge. Not recovery. But something real.
At the end of this video, I'm honestly speechless at the cheap character of the betrayer, but at the same time, I feel extremely satisfied with how the main character handled it. I have to make this clear. The most disgusting part is not the act of fighting over things. but the bite the hand that feeds you mentality of these ungrateful individuals. A severe lack of moral upbringing has turned them into parasites who only wait to take advantage of their own family. My view on the final twist is this. It is a direct slap in the face of greed. The main character is not being excessive, they are simply doing what is necessary. Cleaning out the toxicity from their life. The moment you choose to betray your roots and someone's trust, you remove yourself from being treated with basic human respect. Letting those people lose everything and face society's judgment is the fairest consequence for their actions. The lesson we must remember. Never turn your tolerance into a doormat for selfish people to walk over. Kindness must come with strength and awareness. Being kind to people who lack gratitude is emotional self-destruction. What do you think about the shocked look on their face when they realize they lost everything? Would you cut them off completely, or give them another chance? Leave a strong comment below so we can call out these toxic mindsets together. Sometimes you don't realize how bad a situation is until it keeps repeating. You feel drained, disrespected, but you still hesitate because of emotions. That's exactly why this matters. I will guide you step by step through this issue. This is especially helpful for people who are too kind, those who ignore red flags, or anyone who keeps giving chances to the wrong people. Practical step. Step 1. Stop ignoring red flags. If something feels wrong more than once, don't brush it off. Your instincts are trying to warn you. Step 2. Be honest about what's happening. Say it clearly. This is not healthy for me. No excuses. Step 3. Set a clear boundary. Decide one thing you will no longer tolerate. Step 4. Say it simply and firmly. I won't accept this anymore. No need to over-explain. Step 5. Watch their behavior. If they don't change, that tells you everything. Step 6. Pull back your energy. Reduce your time, care, and attention. Step 7. Protect your space. Limit how much access they have to your life. Step 8. Walk away if needed. If nothing changes, leave. Peace is more important than holding on. So ask yourself, are you holding on because it's right, or because you're afraid to let go?